Okay, so what I'm going to try to do today is talk a little bit about causality, and in particular, I'm going to see if I can't use the diagram here to talk a little bit about formal cause, and maybe see if I can't, in this representation of the different kinds of causes that are classically given in Aristotle, see if I can't, I guess, give a little bit of justification for a recovery of the recognition of formal cause, and I guess as final cause as well. Now, if you look at the diagram, part of what it's trying to do is to combat the reductivism that could be found in both the humanities and in the sciences. And when I say the reductivism, I'm trying to suggest that science, to the extent that it says that art isn't part of nature, is actually being reductive. See, that is, as soon as you try to say that art is one thing and nature is something else, what you're doing is you're treating the human as other than natural, and you're also addressing less than the whole of nature. And so the task, if one is going to be able to address both the humanities and the sciences, one's going to have to, in some way, reckon with all four causes. Now, I think if you look at the diagram here, so nature is, we'll call all of reality. Now, a subset of nature is life, and a subset of life is humanity. Now, all four causes can be found in nature, even if formal cause and final cause are largely the domain of the human. And I think we can find evidence for formal cause and final cause in life, but it seems like the human is encircled and held within formal cause. Okay, so let me see if I can first give a quick review of what Aristotle meant by the four causes, and then talk a little bit more about this notion of eidos and of what forms are. Okay, so first off, try to take a painting. Okay, if I make a painting, the painting's going to have to be made of some material, whether it's acrylic or oil or whether it's just crayon, and it's going to have to be on a particular form of screen or mesh, or it's going to be on stone or a wall. So there has to be a material involved, and that's part of what makes the painting that it is. Okay, the next aspect of causality is the efficient cause. The efficient cause are the particular sequence of events that transformed or shaped the material into its final product. So if we take the brush strokes, the particular technique, the various step-by-step linear sequences that were involved in making it, that's the efficient causality. That is, the painting came into being what it is through the material and then also the efficient. Now, the formal and the final are much more difficult. Those have been somewhat largely abandoned in the naturalistic scientific worldview. Now, again, some of it gets very difficult in the world of physics and biology, or in the world of physics and chemistry. Material cause is sort of in the backdrop, efficient cause rules the day, and formal and final they've been abandoned or just demonstrated to be of dubious worth, things like this. In biology, final cause certainly is there. We find it in things like ontogeny. There does seem to be some kinds of formal cause as well. If you think about the eidetic realm, the degree to which other organisms have concepts, the degree to which they have something like ideas for things, or the extent to which they map and try to represent their world. Now, as far as the painting goes, when you look at the painting, the mind of the painter and the mind of those who would look at the painting are basically the formal cause of the painting. That is, the painting is some product, not only of the material and of the efficient forces that shape that material, but of the plan or the idea, the blueprint, what's in the mind of the painter, which is trying to represent something or to convey an idea, but it's also what the audience has to bring in order to recognize it as a painting of what it's a painting of. Or if I have a sculpture, if the sculpture is of a particular person, there is the material that the sculpture is made of, there is the technique, which is the efficient cause, there is the final cause, which is, looking at it for enjoyment or for identification or for recognition, something like this. But the formal cause, and again, formal and final are very related, but the formal cause is, it's partly in the mind of the audience. See, now I think this is where it gets very tricky. See, I think science and the contemporary scientific worldview that is, post Descartes has severed off the knower and the known. I mean, the post print culture, it introduces this huge gap in between the world as it is and then I guess, the representations or the memories or the cognitions and ideas by which we come to know that. And as useful as that has been in gaining mastery over things like efficient cause and material cause, it has really problematically, I guess, changed, or it's reduced our understanding of the way ideas are part of nature. That is, we are that part of nature which arts, we are that part of nature which has images not only of the things around us which allow us to identify the things as the things they are, but we have an image of ourselves. See, I think, okay, so the diagram here is trying to illustrate that, yeah, formal and final cause, you do find some final cause within life of various forms of ontogeny, various forms of development, but humanity is, it's like it's encircled within, it's held within an entire world that has been made by formal cause. Again, you want to try to understand what everything was like before the advent of the modern severance of knower and known. If you just see the world out there, and the world is filled with different kinds of causes, there is a material cause, there is an efficient cause, a formal and a final. Well, what is formal cause? Formal cause is basically the world of eidos. It's the eidetic world. It's, see, Aristotle picks up his notion of formal cause from Plato's notion of forms, right? Now, take a number like 2. If I look out in the world, I can't ever find a 2, and yet alphabeticacy and numeracy, those are the formal cause of numbers, and then numbers are the formal cause of quantitative reasoning, but those aren't reducible to the material and efficient cause. See, I think part of the problem in the contemporary worldview is that some people in the humanities have really well recognized formal cause, not only in drama, in the way that the effects have to be worked into the play so as to cast their shadows before themselves. I mean, it's not only in drama, but it is in painting. It's, throughout the human world, which is part of nature, we find formal cause, but they haven't maybe sufficiently dealt with the problems of efficient cause. I mean, I see this in communication studies where people want to say that language is arbitrary, that words are simply convention, but they don't want to recognize the indexical character of speech. But this also slides over into the sciences, where the sciences seem not to want to recognize the degree to which all of the world's artistic creations are part of nature, if only that we are that part of nature which opens to formal cause. Now, I think one of the things I just want to comment on here, I guess I'm running out of time, I do want to comment on the little point where humanity swoops out and, as a set, leaves life as it becomes part of nature, extends itself into nature by surpassing the boundaries of life. I mean, I think this would be the point where you look for artificial intelligence. Formal cause is basically the study of communication technologies. When you try to study what a communication technology is, you're trying to study the formal cause, that is, the way that it shapes the eidos, the way that it shapes the sensibilities and the forms by which the world has become intelligible. The world is intelligible only through the forms, and to that extent, all of the other causes, that is, a world of material things to be put in an order and for an ends, those are all actually a consequent of formal cause. Okay, thanks. Okay, well, I thought I could leave it there. I obviously cannot. We're back to the drawing, and I'm going to see if I can't try to review some of the things that I just said and reorient again to try to maybe clarify what it is I'm trying to do with this diagram. Okay, first let's just take a fork. Okay, if you consider a fork, the fork has to be made out of some material. Okay, it has to be made out of bone, or it's plastic, or it's made out of wood, or maybe it's made out of steel. And then the efficient cause would be the particular sequencing and ordering by which that fork is rendered into its form. The formal cause, again, gets very tricky. You could say that the formal cause is the idea in the mind of the shaper or the carver, or it's the blueprint or plan that in advance arranges the materials according to what it will ultimately look like. And so there is something like the mind of the creator operating at the level of formal cause, but it's also at the person who would use the fork. That is, the mind is present in formal cause in that another person who looks at the fork has to be able to recognize it as a fork. That is, the disclosure of the fork as a fork is part of the formal cause that was bringing forth the fork. And the final cause would be for the purpose of eating. Now, it's a very simple example, right? We talked about painting, talked about forks. I think if you step back, though, if I try to address again why formal cause is the ground for the other causes. Okay, right now, just take a moment. Just stop. If you're doing other things while you're listening to the video, stop doing them. Actually, look around your room right now. Take a moment to really use your eyes and focus on everything that's there. The one thing that you can't ever see is formal cause. You can't see the forms. What you see are the empirical materials that can be arranged in certain ways to certain ends. So, and I think the final cause can be somewhat imagined from a thing. That is, if I look at a pen, the pen has the little point which allows me to imagine some future orientation in picking up the pen and using it for a project. Same with a hammer. I mean, the hammer has a kind of design that implies the final cause of, for the use of hammering in its very structure. But the formal cause you can't really see. All you can see are the particular materials which could be arranged in a particular way, and then we can sort of imagine an end from that. The formal cause is, I guess, more like the very eidetic structure that allows those materials to appear as the materials they are for arrangement in various ways to certain ends. So, I mean, try to think about it this way, that the material cause is always potential and it becomes actualized by the formal cause. So in the case of the brick, the making of a house, you have the bricks and the mortar and the wood. Those are the material cause, and then the house, when it gets created, again, they turn from potential into actual. The same with if I have leather and I'm building shoes, the leather goes from its potential material to its actual material. Same with painting. I mean, there's a canvas and then there's various materials for painting, but the actual painting it turns those materials from potential into actual. Well, that's occurring at a larger level than just the examples of human handicrafts and of things in art. I mean, in the ancient world, and this would be a much more robust way to address this issue of how formal cause is actually the ground for material, efficient, and final. It's that formal and final could be said to be the domain of the subject, whereas the material and efficient are largely the domain of the object. And try to imagine what the world was like before the subject-object split had really become sedimented and crystallized as it is today. That is, in the ancient world, before knower was one thing and known was something else, before there was a subject over here and an object over there, and before there was a radical split between art and sciences, people just looked out and they saw the world as it actually was. Not some world where people are fantasizing about trees falling when there's nobody there. No, the world as it actually is a world that, when they discovered it, it already included them, and the humanities and the arts weren't yet separate. So what was the subject? Well, it wasn't this Cartesian thing of mind stuff inside your head. I guess, unfortunately, it was more this Platonic notion of essences out there in Plato's heaven that were calling the materials into existence, into the forms that they had. I mean, this is, the notion of species pre-Darwin is kind of the comparison of our example of how potential materials became actual according to formal cause. The formal cause turns the potential materials into actuality. Well, the ancients imagined a kind of divine mind, a mind of God that would, in giving things their essence, would call them into being materially. And in that sense, the form actually preceded the material existence. Now, I don't think any of that needs to be bought into. I think we can challenge some of that. Instead, you contextualize it. We need to look back and you say, okay, how is formal cause the ground of all of the other ones? Well, if you look, you can't ever see formal cause. Formal cause is the condition of intelligibility for the disclosure of materials being what they are, so as to be ordered as they could be ordered for the ends that now can be imagined given those materials and those arrangements. See, I think, okay, let's try it a different way. Now look at the diagram again. You could say that the domain of what's traditionally camped under the object or the known world or the world of science, that's roughly the domain of nature and of life as it pertains to material and efficient cause. But if you go to what is traditionally, or what's contemporarily known as the subject or the knower or the realm of the human and the realm of art, well, that's what was known in the ancient world as the realm of formal and final cause. Instead of separating off the subject as one thing and the object as something else, or instead of dividing the arts from the humanities, or imagining that what humans do isn't natural, or instead of trying to parcel off nature and address only that which is subject to material and efficient cause, I think we just look at this diagram, and what it's trying to illustrate is that, yeah, what we call the subject is really a constellation of formal and final causes, and what we call the object is this ongoing flow of material and efficient causes. And now, admittedly, there are a lot of formal causes that through the human have entered into life and into nature. I mean, part of the examples would be agriculture and the domestication of animals. I mean, agriculture itself and the domestication of animals is a way that the formal cause of human ideas were shaping the larger organic unfolding of natural selection, right? I mean, natural selection, you could say, was the mechanism of efficient cause until human formal cause grew powerful enough to have cultural evolution start outstripping natural evolution. Right? I mean, dog breeding would be a great example of, the conscious, deliberate design of dog breeds through human conscious intention is very different than sort of this selection through variation that, was sort of characterized, I think, in I guess, basic or broad evolutionary biology. I think a different way to say it is if you look at it, the chart in one way, you could see it as starting at the left-hand side, you sort of place physics, roughly there, and then you move over and then you have chemistry. And then as you move over, you get into geology. And then at that breaking point, you get into biology. Now, biology as life, it still has all the physics, chemistry, stuff beneath it. That is, life is part of nature, and we can't abandon all of those material and efficient dynamics of physical causality. But as you start to move into the human realm, which is part of nature, you get into those fields of semiotics, of, I guess, anthropology, sociology, and then at the core, you get into things like literature and poetry, forms of artistic expression, which they're not subjective. It's not like there's something in the head. I think when we talk about contemporary subjectivity and we imagine that the subject is one thing and the world is something else, we're missing it. The ancients seem to understand that the world, as it shows itself, is just it's a much at onceness which gives four different kinds of causes. And what we call the subject, or the person as mind or consciousness, no, it's a constellation of formal and final causes, which are socio-historical. See, I think this is Dewey's point, that the ancients took the formal and final causes to be, of their culture, to be an expression of some divine mind or of some natural order of things. The moderns, sort of post-Cartesian, they assume that form and ends are completely subjective and wholly within a person's brain, something like a brain state. Neither of them seem to realize that there are formal and final causes in nature. What we call mind, subjectivity, it's a merging of formal, final, material, and efficient, right? It's formal and final can't be separated from material and efficient, but they have properties that aren't reducible to material and efficient. I think, one way that formal cause is re-entering the contemporary worldview is by the word meme. When people use the word meme, it's as if they're trying to deal with the echoing problem of formal cause still being there and having a force in nature, even though it's not what we mean by material and efficient cause. I think, a different way to say all of this is to say that because, I guess, all of the causes are in some sense simultaneous to each other, but formal cause is at root simultaneous. That is, the formal cause is the ground that is always there simultaneous, which allows for the material, which I guess seems simultaneous to itself, but it has the capacity to shape itself according to a new form. So, as I take bricks and lay them and they become the house, or as I take the leather and it becomes the shoe, there is a material there, but that through its shaping, through an agency of efficient cause, it does take on a new form. And I guess the task is to be able to address how the arts and humanities do have a common ground. It's the common ground of the four causes. Instead of trying to imagine human subjectivity as one kind of thing and the world as another kind of thing, or as mind is somehow totally separate off, the task is to maybe recover some of these ancient orientations for the bearing that they have. And I think some people just want to dismiss this, but they don't seem to understand the importance of this to a history of communication technologies. I think what happened was that before literacy, it was impossible in a lot of ways to get an arm's length distance on one's own words. It was very, very difficult to experience the knower as separate from the known. With literacy, the knower and the known becomes more and more of a cleavage. Not only do texts outlive their authors, but they have all kinds of effects in the way that we come to think about ourselves and about the word, about its arrangement, and literacy itself. It created a kind of bifurcation, and subsequent communication technologies, all of them, the mechanical age, the printing press, these they were part of material and efficient cause, but they became part of the formal cause in that they became part of the eidetic sensibilities or the background orientations that people brought to their environment and became the forcing bed for subsequent technologies. Sort of like gesture and dance was the formal cause for the development of speech, and then it became an invisible background, and then speech was the formal cause for the development of writing, and then it became an invisible background. Then writing became the formal cause for the development of science and technology and the mechanical, all of the technological revolution that literacy and numeracy makes possible. But now the electric age, right, is reintroducing some of the connectivity, and it's also forcing part of the problem of formal cause. That is, in the ancient world, they somewhat believed that humans created things similar to the divine mind issuing essences in the world. If the divine mind made the species, humans created art and artifacts. But through history and through time, humans have come increasingly to separate themselves from the conditions of the natural world. They've come to increasingly live in a technological world, a world of their own making. And so formal cause, not only does it have this recovery in recognizing it as something that's subjective in as part of the way nature subjects itself to eidetic forms, but it's increasingly the case that humans live in an environment that was materially created with a final cause in view. I guess it's commercializing and selling of products, but the forms themselves are of human design. And I guess I'm belaboring this and haggling about this at length, and I realize it's probably all over the place, but I would encourage people to think about formal, final cause as what was known in the ancient world as a part of nature, but today has been secluded off as this thing that we call subjectivity or memory. Memory is part of nature. We are that part that discursively has representations of the past, and those are a kind of formal cause. It's hard to, I guess, to convey all this. I would love to get other people's response, people who are familiar with some of the ancients, and see if you can see the value of finding a language or a simple way of describing the common ground that was there before the subject-object split. That is, before art and science were torn asunder and before knower and the known were ripped apart. How did the world show itself, and what were those processes and forces that the ancients recognized, and how is the ancient world now being maybe accessible to us, given the simultaneity of information that the electric age is giving, and the degree to which the human world is increasingly becoming a world that is made. It's something that was produced with a kind of blueprint or a plan or some kind of idea in mind. Okay, thank you.